Welcome back to News Watching. The longest NFL snap streak has been broken. Cleveland Browns lineman Joe Thomas was injured in yesterday's game after 11 straight years in the NFL. John Earl has more on the story. John?
Thank you, Alec. Veteran offensive lineman Joe Thomas was injured in last Sunday's game against the Tennessee Titans, and now the Cleveland Browns are no strangers to injury or to disappointments, but this is a especially disappointing injury for Joe Thomas, especially because it ends his 11-year consecutive snap streak. Now, this means that since he came into the NFL with the Cleveland Browns in 2007, he has not missed an offensive snap the entire time. That equates to 10,363 consecutive snaps. That is the most in NFL history by far. It is unknown if he will return for the rest of the season after his high tricep tear. This tear comes after Roger Goodell visited him last week to congratulate him for the snap streak. It's unknown what's going to happen for the future of his injury and for the future of the Cleveland Browns, Alec.
Now that Joe Thomas is no longer on the streak, who is second on the list?
Well, interestingly enough, no one even really comes close. There's a similar statistic for consecutive games where Jason Witten of the Dallas Cowboys comes in second with. But in terms of consecutive snapping streak, that is Devin Carr of the Ravens. He comes in with 342 snaps. So it doesn't look like anyone is going to be getting in the way of Joe Thomas's streak anytime soon.
Thank you, John. Coming up next on News Watching, Dwayne Wade plays in his debut game with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and more details on the Warriors' loss from last week. Welcome back to News Watching. The longest NFL snap streak has been broken. Cleveland Browns lineman Joe Thomas was injured in yesterday's game after 11 straight years in the NFL. John Earl has more on the story. John?
Thank you, Alec. Offensive lineman of the Cleveland Browns, Joe Thomas, was taken out last Sunday against the the Tennessee Titans with a high tricep tear. Now the Cleveland Browns are no strangers to any kind of disappointment or injury, but in this case, it is at a much higher cost. Joe Thomas currently held the most consecutive snaps in the NFL with 10,363 snaps. That equates to about 168 games. Now, this streak is impressive because that means that since Joe Thomas has come into the NFL in 2007 with the Browns, he has been there for every offensive snap since. Now, more bad news for the Cleveland Browns looking on. They lost to the Tennessee Titans 12-9 in overtime, and you can see his injury right there on the field, on the ground. It is unknown if the Browns are going to have him for the rest of the season, and it is certainly unknown if the Browns are how they're going to do as they lost their 5-year captain. Alec?
So now that Joe Thomas is no longer on the streak, who is the second on the list?
Well, interestingly enough, there really is no one close to second place on this. There is a similar statistic for consecutive games that Jason Witten, tight end for the Dallas Cowboys, currently holds. But other than that, it's Devin Carr of the Ravens, who currently has 264 snaps, so not even close. Reporting at Cleveland, I'm John Earl.
Thank you, John. Coming up next on News Watching, Dwayne Wade plays in his debut game with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and more details from the Warriors last week.
Cowboys suck.